that's one of the biggest issues with coaching and counseling is we're so focused on the end result. We're not willing to sit in the pain and the issues, not realizing that emotions only come up for like 90 seconds, right? We can move through the emotions, they come and go. And the more that we allow the emotions and not disown them, then they become shadow. And so that's another process I do where we look at some of those emotions that we just haven't addressed. And so they're playing out in our subconscious. It results in self sabotage and lots of different ways that it doesn't support us.
Welcome to Sip with Summers, the podcast where we explore sex, intimacy, and pleasure. I'm your host, Jennifer Summers, a pleasure and intimacy queen, and a soon to be certified sex coach and clinical sexologist. Hey everyone, welcome back to Sip with Summers. Today we are joined by the amazing and fabulous Robyn McTague. Robyn is a published author, writer, and speaker, and the creator of a life choice coaching and consulting. She helps individuals, couples, and teams discover their why and how to align with their natural behaviors so they can live authentically and create great relationships in all areas of their lives. Welcome to Sip with Summers, Robyn.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. Robyn, I want to get right into it. I know that you're a coach. I'm curious, what drew you to get into the field of coaching?
It was just that natural progression. I'd always been interested in why people did what they did. I remember like 12 years old. Why are some people aware and other people aren't? And I was always interested in relationships. And I would think about every song is about love and it's these kind of natural connections. And I would play with people and I'd want them to actually do things. I'd be the teacher and I'd try to get them to actually create something. I had a very challenging upbringing and moved around a lot, so didn't feel like I fit in. So that actually created even more interest. And then I went into psychology, counseling, conflict resolution, all these things that I wasn't good at to try to better myself. And then I went to a large organization, used a lot of those skills for a lot of years. I had breast cancer back 24 years ago. And that shifted a lot of things in my life when I opened back up to my spiritual connection and wanted to have a more holistic life, like really mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and started to feel more confident in myself. I did some really deep work and got more involved with dealing with the emotional aspects, not just the intellectual. And then I learned a healing and meditation system that I've been teaching for about 20 years that made such a profound difference for me. I love teaching that. So I did become a teacher just in a very different way than I had originally thought. And being young enough, I could retire early. I'm really here to make a difference and help others who have had challenges like myself to really know that their past and their personality doesn't define them. And then I added additional tools like the motivational map, the Enneagram, and I'm a teacher of that, numerology, and different systems, really looking at all those holistic parts of ourselves and really wanting us to be who we are and not feel that we have to apologize for that.
In what ways do you use your skills the most when you work with clients? Because you shared you do a lot of things, and I am so amazed by all of your skills. Which one do you find yourself using the most?
It's always the conflict resolution, no matter what I'm doing. Like right now, I'm walking someone through. We did her map first, and now we're doing her Enneagram typing. She's having challenges with her partner, and I'm giving her ideas of how to get that perspective. We have our own worldview and our kind of reality strategy, and other people have theirs. And there's a way to bring in more neutral language and more opening of a conversation and dealing with our reactions. And so being able to find different ways that we can connect deeper and be more vulnerable as to who we are allows others. But at the same time, if they're not willing to go there, then we have to make a decision. Was this what I want? What do I want in my life?
Yeah, absolutely. It always seems to come down to that, right? What do you really want and how are you going to get there?
Yeah. And often we don't know, right? That's the thing with the motivational map. We say we're bringing the invisible visible because I always ask people before I do the assessment to guess what drives their behavior. And there's often internal conflicts within that I can find. And again, using the conflict in different ways, seeing where those tensions are to really find that clarity so we can move towards what we do want in more alignment.
Can you share with the listeners who aren't familiar what exactly is mapping an Enneagram?
So the motivational map, and it was the catalyst for me to get into the Enneagram because it's partly based on that. The main three things it's based on is Shine's career anchors, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the Enneagram. And so it gives us 9 different dimensions of motivation. Our top 3 relate are the strongest, so 60 to 70% of our behaviors. And then the bottom one will give us an idea of what we tend to dismiss in ourselves and others. And this can cause a lot of conflict because we don't like it in others. So we may not know why we don't like that person, but it's a behavior they're doing that we're just not comfortable with. So we have relationship motivators, achievement motivators, and growth motivators. And for example, relationship and growth can conflict because growth wants the next thing, the shiny object, and learning and growing and free spirit, whereas relationships take time. So often we talk about personality conflicts when it's often a motivational conflict. And we see this in couples a lot, even the type of communication we want, how slow or fast we enjoy change, all these different aspects. And so it's like a 15-minute assessment and it gives so much depth into an insight into who we are. It was such an aha, like I got so much value. And for me, that low one was really important because it was the friend. And when I worked corporately, I didn't rely on those relationships to fuel me. I was more interested in the growth. So I was learning. I did different jobs. I loved to better myself. I was doing my fitness at lunch. I didn't really have time for building relationships. And I saw those people as needy that wanted more of my time that I could give. And so I really had to reframe and see it in a different way, especially as an entrepreneur, because it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And it isn't that I don't love relationships, it's what is the focus? And am I including that? If we're really focused in one area, we're missing out on something else. So, how can we bring in more balance? And then the personality part is through the Enneagram, and it's a psycho-spiritual tool for our growth and transformation. So it not only gives us our starting point within those 9 different types, it gives us ways that we see the world, how we interact, and it can go really deep. There's just so much depth that we can do with the tools around the Enneagram. Every assessment has some value to it. But yeah, so we do our Myers Briggs. It tells us something, but it doesn't give us a path or a growth dimension. And that's what I love about the Enneagram and the ability, again, to see those worldviews of others. And when we can look at these 9 types, we can actually bring in and see different ways to do it for ourselves so we can expand our ability to use these different aspects.
I cannot wait to get my mindset mapping and my Enneagram done. Now, you shared earlier that you'll ask people to guess what it is, and they often guess wrong. When you did your own, did you have that same experience?
I did, and it's been a while now, so that's a good question. I Probably, well, especially for the bottom one. I didn't think it would be that low for the friend. And the star I knew, but again, it was one of those ones that is a challenge for me still, but I have a better framework for it. And I see it with a lot of entrepreneurs because the star is always on a sliding scale, right? You can have no star where you don't want anyone to see you, or you can have the big movie star that's out there in social media all the time. And we do see people in the business world that do that. And it works for some people. Though when we think of that, we might react to that, but can we slide it back to the old saying about we can't find a partner if we're just sitting at home waiting for them to knock on a door?
Yeah,
So,
learned that one the hard way. Now, speaking of dating and relationships, as a coach, I often get questions about relationships and dating. How does this all work in relationships? Are you doing the Enneagram for each partner in a relationship, or tell me more about that?
yeah, the map is actually quite interesting, the motivational map with couples. I had a couple, they were nearing retirement. And so I did their map and they were very similar. And was it groupthink or are they actually similar personalities? It was hard to see. And I just said, you must have been together for a really long time. And they had. And so, because they were leaving their work life and having more time together, it was really valuable for them to see they were both really high growth. So they really wanted to learn and grow, and that's great. And we have to think about our resources too. So, how much money are you going to spend on learning and growing and doing these different things? Do you have the budget? How are you going to budget? And what are the things that are going to keep you together? What are the relationship pieces that you're going to make sure that you incorporate so you're both not going your own way and learning and then you grow apart? And we see this more and more where people in later years are divorcing because they have gone in different directions just without that awareness, right? We're just doing our daily life. And after a while, we've become roommates because we don't spend that time together and make that a priority or at least include it. What are you going to do together? And for them, it was really great because one was a writer and wanted to pursue more of that, and the other liked to edit. So it's like, great. Are you going to do some projects together so that you can really spend some time and go a bit deeper with each other and not just be off on your own? So that's one example. It's great too for couples, even if you're looking at investing. That was another one that was surprising to me. So if someone's really high growth and yeah, let's just do that crypto or whatever, the hot thing, and the other one is more relationship based, it's like, I don't know about that. And so there might be that tension because one wants something more secure, the other is, oh no, let's really make some money and really enthusiastic about that. With the Enneagram makes a huge difference. With one particular type, for example, much more restrained emotionally. And because it's one of the ones that it's kind of on my side, we have our main type, and then on either side is wings. I have one of these wings where when I was asked when I was younger, how do you feel about that? What do you think about it? I need a lot of time. So we see this in relationships where one might be really strong and really deep in emotions and really has deep access to those deeper, darker emotions and loves to express them. And the partner is more that cerebral, a bit cut off from the feelings, not a wider range of feelings, and needs more time. And they might say, I need some time to think about it. And the other is pushing them instead of giving them that time. And when they understand this is just normal for this person, it isn't a slight to you, it's not personal, right? Because we tend to take things personally when it's really about that person.
Do you tend to deal more with couples or single people?
Lately, it's been more singles.
Okay.
And yeah, again, it's a lot of that communication stuff and just different ways of approaching it. And it's interesting because I was just listening to another program and people are wanting to be more in community. And I think that's really important, but we need to build those skills and resiliency to be able to do that. And that's when we get into trouble. We take it all personally and then we want to shut ourselves away because we've had a few challenges and and we think, yes, there's that part of reflection back to us and what we might need to work on for ourselves. Like maybe I'm not seeing the vulnerability in others. What do I need for myself to be able to build more of that? There's that piece where, yes, there is a mirror and learning, and there is the part of having the distance to say what is mine and what is someone else's and not taking that on.
Yeah, I really feel like communication is such a skill that so many people are not create so many problems. What was it like for you growing up? Like, how was the communication in your family?
There was yeah, so my mom was mentally ill. She was suicidal. The first time I remember it was 4, and my dad was an alcoholic, rageaholic, abuser, and she and I actually left, my dad and brother, and my brother and I were separated for 7 years, so it was really challenging when he did come back to live with us because he'd been in this very toxic environment and felt abandoned and had all this anger and wasn't able to express it or get the support that he needed for it. And I see it in him today, which is unfortunate. And I've had to create some really strong boundaries with him. But because face it, most of us don't learn boundaries growing up. And that's also one of the top, I would say, 2 things, the conflict resolution and the boundaries with people is to understand what a boundary is and then start to create those boundaries and realize that people are going to push back because we've let them walk over the boundary in the past. So it feels like we have to be really stoic and staunch and really difficult with people until people actually realize we are going to hold that boundary and then we can relax. So it's this learning process and not making ourselves wrong when it didn't go right and we did let someone cross our boundary again and just learning from that so that we can be kinder and more compassionate with ourselves because we didn't learn this. We didn't learn any of these skills usually in our family. It's very few and far between. And that's the benefit of being able to have a personal development process and ways to actually learn. And yes, books to a certain degree, but we can't learn it all in books. We have to practice and do the work. And we can't just bypass the feelings, which is what a lot of people want to do. And I would think my view is that's one of the biggest issues with coaching and counseling is we're so focused on the end result. We're not willing to sit in the pain and the issues, not realizing that emotions only come up for like 90 seconds, right? We can move through the emotions, they come and go. And the more that we allow the emotions and not disown them, then they become shadow. And so that's another process I do where we look at some of those emotions that we just haven't addressed. And so they're playing out in our subconscious. It results in self sabotage and lots of different ways that it doesn't support us.
I have like full body chills right now. This is incredible, Robin. With everything that you shared so far, how often does sex come up when you're coaching people or talking with people?
I would say that's a harder one sometimes to get to because it is very vulnerable. So people have to feel safe. And that's one of the pieces that I really incorporate People have to feel safe and they have to be able to self regulate. I was in a book on sexual abuse and I was doing a talk, and they said, "Well, how come my therapist isn't doing that with me?" And I said, "They probably need to see that if you have the capacity before you can go to that deeper part. We have to build step by step." And I would say with the sex, when there is the discussion around it, it's more around the communication. It comes back to the communication and what I like and what I feel afraid to say I like. I'm going to feel judged. We judge ourselves. We don't know if that our other person is going to judge us, or maybe we want something different, that we've had a stable way that we've done this. And now all of a sudden I want to mix things up. And how is that going to upset my partner? And so just opening the dialogue again and being curious, like my mantra from conflict resolution is be curious. All behavior makes sense. So at least to that person, it does. So, just opening it up with, this is a difficult conversation for me to have with you. Are you open to discussing our sexual life? Let's just start the conversation and see where it goes, and we can come back to it. So, not insisting we have to do it now, we have to finish it all, and, we're going to come to a resolution. Let it evolve. Just start the conversation, tap into that courage, know that you're worth it, and the relationship is worth it.
Now, one thing I'm learning in my coaching practice is that we often, as a coach, we know what we need to do, but we're not doing it. But how do you take your own advice?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I trained in counseling, that was one of our whole module was on self-care and taking care of yourself. I have my motivational maps mentor. I have some with the Enneagram, with my meditation and healing course. I have healing mates and I connect with them once a week and look at where are those blocks and what do I need to do. And it's ongoing. We have to evolve. Otherwise, we're not doing a great service for our clients if we're not willing to grow and change and look at different perspectives, then we get stagnant too.
I agree with the extreme self care. When you're helping and healing other people, it's so important that we put ourselves first and help and heal ourselves along. So I'm curious, when you were growing up, what kind of messages did you receive growing up about sex, intimacy, and pleasure?
Yeah, it was really shut down in me. I was promiscuous as a teenager because I was brought up to think that men had the right over my body. I mean, my dad had issues with my brother. We lived with another family and there was abuse there. So didn't happen just once, which is pretty normal, right? We have this energetic and that follows us until we address it. And it was actually during dealing with the cancer. I had spent 6 months on my sofa dealing with all the emotion, kind of really delving deep and allowing stuff out. And then just before I was coming back to work, I was doing some counseling because I felt really vulnerable, like I'd gone really deep energetically and had had all this time in this very quiet space. Like often I would have no music or TV or anything. It was just really quiet, peaceful. And I was going back into a large office with over 1,000 people, very stressed out. And thankfully, I found the meditation and energy healing with the shielding. And I felt this kind of dark energy in my stomach. And the counselor said to me, just sit with it, continue to sit with it. And I did. And all of a sudden, and I'd always been connected to people who were not included. And I always felt different for many different reasons. But what happened was I felt this tilt in my worldview and realized that I was gay. And it was like finally allowing that to come forward because as a young person living in small towns, there was no view of that. There was no discussion. It was very straight and narrow, and this is the way women are, and this is the way men are. And I was kind of curious as I got older. And it was really interesting in my marriage because my ex husband said to me, "What you want, you won't find in a marriage with a man." It was true.
So did he know before you knew?
I'm not sure. It was certainly the writing on the wall. And yeah, it was just really interesting how it happened, where that kind of shift in view happened for me. And it was just like instantaneous. And I felt it in my gut, like it was very visceral. And then it's like, oh, that's interesting. Now, how am I going to address this? How am I going to deal with this? And it was funny because one of my friends from work, she was by and I had invited her over for lunch. And she was the first one I came out to because she was a safe person. And she says, "Well, of course." Again, knowing before me, right? Just not admitting it, even though I was doing all these things to support that community.
Mhm.
And that was kind of the last piece that really freed me up in my sexuality, where I started to just allow myself to even explore my own body more, right? Because there was this whole thing about my body with the breast cancer and feeling different with my body. And how am I going to accept my new normal and my new body and how it is?
City, and when you shared that, Robin, I felt that in my body. It was almost like a giant spark of excited energy for you. Like, how do you feel different since that moment?
I just feel more myself. I don't have to hide that part of me. And it's been a process. And even with coaching, where I'm adding in some teamwork that I'm doing, and I'm joining a new association for LGBTQ plus practitioners and businesses. And I think it's really important where people can really feel included to be visible, right? Because we haven't, some coaches are, well, if I say that, then I'm going to not get people from this other area, whatever it is. But if we're not true to ourselves and we're not willing to be who we are we even going to attract the right people? And how does that translate to our clients if we can't be who we are when that's what we're asking them to be? There's an energetic, and if it's not aligned, then you probably are going to have more challenges getting clients.
Can sense when someone's being authentic or not. And one of the best things I did for my life, my business, everything was to really lean into my own authenticity, even knowing that some people wouldn't like it or, wouldn't like the awkward side, but like knowing that I am 100% who I am, it's attracted all the people that I want to my life and amazing people like you. I want to shift gears a little. What is your morning routine, Robin?
First thing I do is meditation. So I actually do a three-centered practice that I learned through the Enneagram, which we have three centers. We have our body center, our heart center, and our head. So I spend a couple of minutes in each center, really noticing what's going on, what's present for me in the moment, and then an integration, noticing how those three are working together because we tend to use one main one and kind of a secondary one, and we can forget about another one, right? We have those preferences. So, how can I bring in more of that so I can make better decisions for myself, more discernment, more connection, more presence? And then I do my meditational work and set myself up for the day with that. And always my tea. I'm not a coffee drinker. I always have my tea and some healthy breakfast. And yeah, I usually start calls around 8 o'clock. And then during the day, I get my exercise. I always make sure. From the cancer, I have had issues with my lymphatic system. So it's really important for me to move. So if I don't get a walk in during the day, and I also love connecting with nature and taking nature pictures, that respite part of the day where I get out and get that movement that I need and fuels me in a bunch of different ways.
That is definitely one of the big components of my daily self-care too. Going outside, nature pictures, talking to the birds, pretending I'm Snow White. So, with everything that you know about holistic health, how has it impacted your sex life now?
I would say more relaxed about it rather than having to figure it out or whatever it is, right? Where
Mhm.
you can get too in the head, right? And thinking and figuring it out. And really we have what's called instincts with the Enneagram as well. And so there is that piece of that kind of passion energy that is around that. It can be sexual. It's not just sexual, but it is that kind of charisma and those different parts. And that part was shut down a lot in me. And so I'm always having that view of where is the passion? Where is that energy? So coming from a different place instead of the more intellectual, it's like, yeah, where is that passion? Can I just allow the relaxation to go with what I want and be open about that? And so it's whether it's with myself or a partner. And yeah, knowing that we need that part, I think people say, "Oh, I don't need this in my life," but really we're just saying that because it feels like a challenge. We can do a lot for ourselves and explore. There's nothing wrong with that, and you'll be surprised sometimes what maybe feels good that you didn't really think about, but, maybe something else didn't work, and that's okay. But just can you be open to different ways of looking at it, experimenting?
Thank you for sharing. So, I want to know, what are you currently reading or watching that you're really liking that you want to share with our audience?
Well, I usually have a couple of Enneagram books on the go. So I'm in the process of reading a book around the law of three, the Cynthia Bergault. It's quite dense, so I read it in bits and pieces. And I actually have another one that I really love. It's around grief. So many people, I find that society, anger and grief are the two emotions that we have the most challenges with. And so anytime we can kind of tap into that and learn more about it is really important. The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Frances Weller. And it just talks about all these different types of grief. And it just is, you feel seen and heard in it. And we were never meant to grieve alone. And we need community. And there's different types of grief. And I've always said this to people, grief isn't linear. And a new grief will bring up old griefs because we haven't really processed it. So it's one of those things that is just so important. And yeah, again, not some bits and pieces because I really want to savor it and allow that to work through me. And then one of our Canadian comedians, Rick Mercer, he's hilarious. Read his second book, and he actually, for those of you in the US, you'll have to look him up because he did this whole series about asking Americans questions, and he'd make things up, and
Gosh,
the answers were so funny.
I will definitely have to look this up. You mentioned to me that you have a free meditation on relationships. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's about 15 minutes, and I break it into stages to help you to discern for yourself. Do you want to go a bit deeper? So it's something that you can use on a continuous basis with different relationships in your life. So, really looking at bringing in the safety for yourself, feeling comfortable to be able to look at the relationship in a different way and what that might represent from our past because we learn all those patterns when we're very young. And often it's a part of us that wants to heal a part of us, or it reminds us of someone. So we might be reactive to them, or we're even attracted to them because of energetics, a lot of different reasons. But it just gives you that space to feel comfortable, safe, to look at relationships for yourself.
I'm so excited to check it out. I can't wait. Is there anything else going on that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap this up?
On the website, I do have different events coming up. I teach some other little things like a workshop on anxiety and depression. I'm part of a group. We do a reclaim your power, kind of some simple ways to get out of those disempowering conversations back into our power. So, some simple, I love pragmatic things. So, I just post on the events page on the website anything that's coming up.
Amazing. I'm going to make sure Robyn's contact info will be in the show notes so you can check her out. Robyn, thank you so much for your time today. This was so enlightening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Big thanks to Robyn today for sharing all this great information around mind mapping and Enneagram, understanding boundaries, and conflict resolution. Be sure to check out the show notes for all upcoming events, Robyn's website, her partner conflict resolution, which offers 5 steps for a peaceful home, and then my personal favorite, a healing meditation to clear and create the relationships that you want. Also, please take a moment to rate and review this show. This really helps us to grow our reach and help even more people. Thanks for listening, and remember to sip on life's pleasures.